Disney, this isn't the first or the 526th time I said this, but to summarize in the words of Dirty Harry,
man's got to know his limitations.
I understand you're on an underwhelming streak of poorly made live-action adaptations of peerless animated classics one after the next, but this is basically just the equivalent of holding a double-barrel shotgun on an injured baby horse. You just gotta put it out of its misery at some point. Okay, maybe I went too far. Maybe that's too much for the kids. Let me think. Oh, okay, I got one. How about just treat it like Elsa would? Just let it go. Now, I myself am all for original concepts in the film industry, but originality has been absent since the 50s, and unlike the rest of Hollywood, they haven't been doing a darn thing about it. Disney has tried its hand into something original with Maleficent, putting us into the perspective of Disney's better-known villains, while also telling the story of Sleeping Beauty, which would be freaking awesome if it was executed eloquently. But it didn't work so well critically with audiences, because the film when it was released was a terribly generic and underwhelming misfire for turning the most evil villainess in all of Disney villains into a misunderstood anti-hero, which ultimately robbed the villain of her overall presence, whose sole purpose of becoming evil is because her boyfriend did his best Bill Cosby impersonation and roofied her while taking off her wings just so he can inherit the throne in order to stop a war between her kind and the kingdom. So I ask you, ladies and gentlemen, what's worse than a live-action retelling of something that'll live up to the expectations of attempting something fresh and innovative, but ultimately failing its masses in the aftermath? A sequel to said live-action retelling. Disney is so creative. Seriously, Disney? Who wanted a sequel for this drat? Nobody wanted to see Roseanne Barr sing the national anthem, and nobody wanted a sequel to Maleficent. But we do have a sequel to Maleficent, and it's in the form of Maleficent, Mistress of Evil. But let's be real here. The only thing that is considered evil, according to the film's subtitle, is the fact that this movie was even released. But anyway, the plot. 5 years ago, after the first film, Princess Aurora, once again played by Elle Fanning, is about to get married to Prince Philip, as they both confirm that they would need their parents' blessings in order to do so. Angelina Jolie reprises her role once again as Maleficent, is precarious on the situation and doesn't comply with Aurora, but eventually she goes along with it for her own sake. However, it turns out that the prince that Aurora is about to be happily wed to is the son of the royal but resentful Queen Ygritte, portrayed by Michelle Pfeiffer. But during a night of Meet the Parents, Ygritte triggers Maleficent about a murder of 2 men that she did not commit, and even provokes her about her relationship with Aurora, leading Maleficent to flip out and supposedly put a sleeping curse on the king, which leads to an eventual conflict between the humans and the Moors, and Maleficent discovering that she's not the only one of her kind. Now, the problems are apparent from the get-go. The script of Maleficent, Mistress of Evil is the most derivative, uninspired story imaginable. From the moment the story begins all the way to how the story ends. You wouldn't need any sort of precognitive abilities of what needs to occur. Not just because the scenarios and the structure of the story has been done to death by other films much better than this, but the writing is so lazily littered with contrivances and illogical incoherence that it leaves you baffled at the fact that these dull, uninteresting characters, with their forgettably insignificant subplots no less, actually did the things they did, or by how the film unveils something that really doesn't make any sense in the film, but it exists solely to move the plot forward. For example, throughout the film she travels along with Chiwetel Ejiofor to discover this secret underground fairy civilization. If there's a secret fairy civilization, where's Maleficent been this whole time? Did her parents die and was she left in the moors? And these horned fairies, when it comes to battle strategy as it's being led by Ed Skrein in the film, have the worst battle strategy I have ever seen since the Game of Thrones episode The Long Night. But at least in this movie, you can see what was happening. They're charging towards the kingdom, and then they're getting killed off left and right because of a powder that disintegrates fairies a la Underworld style. Why didn't they just ambush from the sky and attack the kingdom? Why didn't they come up with the plan in the first place? This isn't The Last Jedi! When Ygritte uses a hidden switch for her lair, she twists it, thus opening the door, and then the switch reverts back to its original position when closing. But when Aurora finds it, it's at the opening position, and the door's closed. There is a numerous set of illogical contrivances that happen just for the sake of the narrative, and it's embarrassing that these elements were even brought in the final cut of the film. And you know how the first film went out of its way to rip off Frozen in the final act of the film? Mistress of Evil does it just about as egregious, because much like the first film, it reaches for the low-hanging fruit and doesn't even attempt to do something organic, ripping off stuff from How to Train Your Dragon 2 and even Avatar. Yes, This movie manages to rip off a film that was already a rip-off. The dialogue is borderline cheesy as the writing goes for something that thinks it's witty and clever, but embarrassingly falls flat on its face when it's performed by the actors. Seriously. Nobody can perform this dialogue and make it sound even remotely believable. And don't let this movie fool you on its visual effects and CGI compositing, because it is just about as ugly looking and poorly composited as it was in the first film, with its uninspired production, and the creature designs aren't even breathtaking, creative, or authentic. And the action scenes, despite what the reviews that I have heard from claiming it to have a shockingly high body count for a PG-rated family film, have no stakes or tension within the set pieces. Look, if I wanted to see a PG-rated family film with a high body count, I watch Chronicles of Narnia. At least you have characters to root for. The positives are practically minute, but what the film compensates for is probably with some of the performances. Firstly, Angelina Jolie as Maleficent. Much like her performance in the previous film, when she is allowed to be villainous and evil, she fits the part perfectly. But that doesn't change the fact that at other points, she looks completely disinterested and bored, leaving her to be completely upstaged by the actual villain of the film, Michelle Pfeiffer's Queen Ingrid, who completely steals the show. She provides a wicked and charismatic personality to her role, and her character has the tiny sense of reasonable motivation for the actions that she is causing. But if you think that this film could have jumped the shark any worse, the film ends on a gigantic tonal shift that ends the film with a magic solves everything happily ever after that put me in such astonishment at how bad it was executed. I mean, guys, we just got finished fighting in a war where men and fairies are getting slaughtered and murdered, and then 2 minutes later, after a battle sequence, all of a sudden we're cutting to a wedding like nothing ever happened on the same day after the battle? What? Maleficent, Mistress of Evil is unashamedly bad for multitudinous reasons, but despite its minimal virtues, there's nothing saving this thing. If there was a way to let Disney know that these live-action sequels to remakes are not so much of a good idea other than to waste money on a secondary film alongside Alice Through the Looking Glass, this would be an obvious starting point. Do I know better, Maleficent? I know better not to greenlight this piece of crap. That is for dang certain. Alright guys, so that was my review of Maleficent, Mistress of Evil. If you like this video, please like it and let me know what you thought of the film. You'll also find me on media outlets such as Facebook, Twitter, and if you have a phone, find me on Instagram. And as always, if you would like to see more reviews like this, be sure to subscribe for more. Disney, you better deliver Frozen 2 in a big way. My name is Yuka, and you have been blown away.